Hi, everyone. Welcome to Bike Culture Happy Hour. This is week 8, and we are here with some special guests in the studio. Before we get to them, we want to remind you guys that we have our Bike Fun pennant on the Film by Bike website. This is an idea that came out of one of our Bike Culture Happy Hours. So we think it's so cool that this idea was generated right here in this space. The idea being that maybe we can't be riding together right now, but we can still express our shared passion for fun on two wheels. So we collaborated with Pedalpalooza here in Portland, and they shared their design for their annual pennant with us this year and transformed it into a team Bike Fun pennant. This is a downloadable PDF. You can find it on our website. You can do whatever you want with it. You can print it out on cardboard. You can print it out on fabric. You can use it as your desktop pattern. There are different colors to choose from. As you can see, we're scrolling through those there. And we're really excited to gift this to the global community as a way to just fly the flag, show that you're into bikes, and rally around getting through this crazy time together. So here on Bike Culture Happy Hour, we're really excited to bring in different guests every week. So I'll go through and introduce who we have here today. We've got joining us from Corvallis, Oregon. We have Kailey Kornhauser. Kailey, thanks so much for being here today. We're excited to have you. Kailey wrote an article that was in Bicycling Magazine back in the fall. We'll talk more about that. She's a fat positivity cyclist, but she's also a great adventurer and doing all sorts of interesting work. So I can't wait to talk more about that with you. We've also got Sheilagh Griffin tuning in from the woods, but she's a Portland cyclist and an adventurer as well. So we're excited to have you on, Sheilagh. You will see Sheilagh as she in the chat. So if you're a regular on the program, you may have seen Sheilagh on the chat in some of our virtual events. So we're excited to have you here as well, Sheilagh. And Kelcy King tuning in from Bellingham, Washington, also a great adventure cyclist as well. So now that I've got you all on here, I'm going to take the pennant away and put everyone back on here. So once again, you can find that pennant on our website, but I've got it off screen now. We've got the chat window going. So folks, if you're tuning in, feel free to use that chat window. You can just comment on things or you can ask questions of our guests and I'll read that off to them as well. So you guys, I thought we would just kind of kick things off by checking in. How are you guys doing? What are things like? Kelcy, it looks like it's really sunny up there in Bellingham.
What?
I'm jealous.
Just this afternoon, it poked out.
Wow, nice. What are things like down in Corvallis, Kailey?
It's been really rainy today, but all of the wildflowers are blooming, so it's really beautiful, even though it's been pouring rain.
Nice. And so, Sheilagh, are you still escaped from Portland? Are you still out in the woods during quarantine? Tell us a little bit about that.
I am. I'm up on the mountain in a cabin, and it is, I must say, a fabulous way to spend quarantine. I can sleep in, relax, read, go for a run, go for a bike. I'm currently unemployed because I was laid off from my job because of COVID. So, and I have mixed feelings about that. You know, at some level, it kind of feels like, oh, I get to have a little vacation, a little break. But there's also a little part of me that's got this like back of the mind anxiety about, okay, what's next? But I feel like I've been able to get outside. And for me, that is just a huge lifesaver. I love it. And it's been super rainy up here. So I've been running more than riding the past couple of days.
So I know all three of you are big adventurers. Tell me a little bit about what you think it is that led you to a life where you're seeking out adventures in general or by bike. I know you guys do things other than just ride bikes to get out an adventure, but what do you guys think it is that kind of led you to have that itch you wanted to scratch? Any one of you can kick it off. Yeah, go for it, Kelcy.
So I was born and raised in Colorado, and just that I think on its own was a space where getting out and exercising was the culture. So I guess I'm thankful to be in that. And then my dad owned a bike shop when I was a kid. So I was just super lucky to be immersed in that in a way that not a lot of people were. And my dad was really into biking back and forth from our hometown to the shop, which was not in our hometown. It was about 40 miles away. So we did that on the weekends and did a lot of backcountry camping and riding when I was a kid. So I think I just kind of continued on that path.
Yeah, that's great.
That's really cool. I grew up in Chicago area in the Midwest. There's people do cycle. My family wasn't really into biking other than just around the neighborhood, but we went on a lot of camping trips out west. We had a giant RV, so we did most of our traveling in a bus-sized RV. Not a lot of like moving around with our own bodies, but got to see the West and see what adventure could be like. And then I moved to the West to do to go to college, and didn't have a car anymore, and lived in a place where cars were less frequently used. And so I got into riding a bike just to get groceries, and from there I started going further and further and actually biking like as a cyclist, and then figured out you could ride your bike really far distances off-road and go camping with your bike and do all this amazing stuff that I had done like via car travel before, via RV travel, and then transition that into doing it by bike. So even a few summers ago, I went from an RV trip with my parents directly into a bike packing trip, and it's just so funny like how you can go from traveling with everything, including the kitchen sink in this RV, to everything strapped on your bike, and it's just as fun and awesome, but a totally different experience.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think there's an interesting pivot point that tends to happen where, I don't know if you guys experienced this, but for me, it's more, originally when I got into bike life, I was a little bit more of a purist, and hearing about an RV trip, I would have been like, oh man, that's like what I would have done when I was a kid. But now I've turned that corner where I can still do those kinds of things with my family and appreciate it and meet them where they are, and then go off and do my own adventure that's going to be different. But getting, I don't know, I guess it's a maturing thing, but getting away from the need for purism and to just be able to meet people where they are and enjoy like their taste of what it is, and just accept them for that, at least not sitting on the couch kind of an attitude. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I love that idea of going from RV trip with the fam onto your own expedition. Where in Chicago area are you from?
I'm from a little town called Cary. It's up in the northwest suburbs. If you're familiar with maybe Barrington, is a little bit bigger town.
That's where I'm from.
Oh my gosh. That is so funny.
Yeah, I grew up in Barrington, spent most of my life there. I've got some good friends here in Portland that I've met here in Portland who are from Barrington. We kind of don't define the stereotype of Barrington.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so cool that you're from that area. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
So Sheilagh, what about you? What would you say kind of got you into this whole realm?
As a kid, my family did adventures, but again, they were similar to what Kailey was talking about, like car camping and going off as a family camping. But as I got older, at college, I got a bike right as I went off to college, Miata 610 touring bike that I absolutely loved, wished I had never sold it. And I commuted by bike in college. At some point in time, I moved off campus, and that was kind of the beginning of like 15, 20 mile rides. And then fast forward, I moved to Portland. I still had that same touring bike. And in 1997, I started doing longer and longer rides. And then I started doing century rides. And then I got involved in Cycle Oregon, and then I got involved in racing and cyclocross. And, it wasn't actually until just a couple of years ago that I started mountain biking. And I feel like I've just kind of like spent a lot of time going, I just love being outdoors. And the bike for me can take me so much farther, and I can see so much more, that is just fabulous. And I feel like for me, getting outside, getting physical activity is like mental health as in addition to physical health for me. It's so important.
Yeah. So as adventurers, what are things like for you guys right now? What are you guys doing, not doing? How are things different for you right now? Oh, and by the way, before we get into that, I just want to mention one thing from the chat that you guys cannot see, and that is that we have James W., who is currently sailing. He's on a sailboat up towards Anacortes. He biked there, I think, and now he's on a sailboat. And he's got a beer in one hand and a book in the other. So welcome, James. It's awesome to have you in the chat. Multimodal tonight. We haven't yet had a sailor. So thank you, Sailor James, for joining us.
I'll just jump in really quickly. For me, adventuring has changed because I'm up in the mountains, so I'm very careful to go out only on weekdays. I take a mask with me, and I don't wear it all the time, but I put it up when I see people. And I'm also hiking and running more because there are times when the weather just doesn't really comply for biking, and I don't really feel like being totally soaked and cold and wet. So but I feel like I'm super lucky to be able to get outdoors. And I'm not sure what it would look like if I were at home, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like I had a lot of big plans for the summer that I had to let go of. I'm sure everybody did. And so some big bike trips that I was hoping to go on have now turned into more like walks around the neighborhood. And for us, we had most of our trails and most of our forest access closed until this past weekend. And I think that was a really great call, but it was really difficult to not have access to our mountain bike trails or to our gravel roads. I had never thought about what it would look like to not have access to those things and live in this town. And so, compared to what other folks have lost, so minimal, but we did sort of lose our access to the places that make us love to live here. But we have now, walked around parts of our town that we've never seen before. We started going to the park and practicing, trying to learn how to do a wheelie, something I never thought I would try to do. And so that's been really cool to just kind of explore our town in a different way. And then once the forest and the trails did open back up, just this unbelievable whole new level of appreciation for a 5-mile mountain bike ride that normally would just be something to just kind of get out after work, and now is the biggest deal to us. So I think it's been a bit of a bummer, some reframing, and just getting to see the community in a new way. So still getting out.
Awesome. How about for you, Kelcy?
Well, I moved to Bellingham from Portland in October. So that was a whole huge shift in itself, from the just all the street riding to now riding more dirt. And then once the lockdown hit, our local mountain biking chapter actually did a really, really fantastic job of signage and advocacy to keep our trails open. So I've still been mountain biking a lot. I have a super flexible schedule, so I tend to go more on the weekends and also super early because it gets light so early up here. And it's been really great. I really haven't run into a lot of people I always have a mask on me, but I have not actually run into a scenario where I felt like it's necessary to put that on. I think people are being really, really respectful of the regulations because they want our trails open. It is such a huge source of mental health for us up here, and cycling, biking in general, for everybody. But so I've been doing a lot more mountain biking. But really the biggest thing that's changed for me is the riding out into the county. So Bellingham is much, much smaller than Portland, and we have incredible access to the rest of Whatcom County. So I can go on a 40, 50 mile bike ride just on county roads with views of Mount Baker, and then the Canadian range. So I've been doing a lot more solo stuff out in the county, where I'm not really seeing or running into any other cyclists, honestly. Yeah. Mostly drivers, big trucks. But I would say there's so many people on their bikes here. And it really hasn't changed all that much. People have just become a lot more respectful of how they're riding and where they're riding and what time of day and how they're accessing the mountain. So we have some regulations of where we can and can't park. And people are asking us to ride to the actual mountain biking trails instead of driving our cars and congregating. So it's been different, but also not different in a way that I'm super privy to because I just haven't been here all that long.
Yeah. It's a neat way to have the time to explore your new community. So,
just just to see how we're all supporting each other too, so that we can all stay on our bikes.
Yes.
Because that's so important.
It's always impressive too, the things like the signage you mentioned. I mean, everyone just figured it out. There was no protocol. I mean, really, there wasn't a solid protocol. And I'm impressed I'm a signage nerd. I love signage. So I'm like, oh, who thought to do that? I've seen some signs that are super simple and so clear. And some are funny. In Florida, they've got one where they use an alligator as the distance between people. And it's like, oh yes, that'll resonate with the folks there. So I love seeing good trail signage and that sort of thing. A little break for the chat. We've had folks saying that they're really enjoying hearing from a bunch of adventurers and listening to your ride stories. So that's nice to hear. Also, someone's wondering what you guys have in your glasses. Do you guys, not your reading glasses, but your visual glasses, but what are y'all drinking today? We tend to have some interesting drinks on the show. Specifically, someone asked about what's in someone asked what was in your mason jar, Kelcy. Ooh.
Clear that is. This was at the $1 off rack for singles at the local little gas station right here.
Nice.
I need to drink more.
Wow. Nice beer to have at a gas station.
I wish I knew what this was. It's a Hefeweizen of some kind. My partner picked up from the local pizza place that's doing growler fills. So I actually don't know what it is, but it tastes really good.
Awesome.
And I'm going to give a shout out to my favorite Groundbreaker IPA number 5. It's gluten-free beer brewed in Portland, Southeast Portland, and it's the best gluten-free beer in the world. Honestly, I've tasted a lot of them.
So Peter Kuntz, who's a traffic engineer, tuning in on the chat, says I should have been a traffic engineer because I like to nerd out on signage. So thank you for that, Peter. And Sheilagh Dar is saying that you should tell them where you have been riding, and you put an exclamation point behind that. So sounds like there's a story there.
Oh well, so up on Mount Hood. Technically in Mount Hood Forest, the trails are closed, but there seems to be this kind of unwritten, like if you ride to the trailhead, then it's okay. And we're also using like trails that we know are very much untraveled. And I think what Dar might be referring to is we had a great adventure on Saturday. We went to the old Highway 26, which is Highway 26 that's been decommissioned. And there's this roadway that is absolutely beautiful, kind of gotten a lot mossy. It's really cool. Trees growing over it, but there were a ton of down trees. So we took equipment and cleared that path so now that you can actually ride from one end to the other. It's a short ride, but the coolest thing is along that short ride is Yoakum Falls. And if you can hear the falls when you're passing it. And if you stop there and you hike down the hill, there are these amazing falls that used to be a destination spot on Highway 26. Oh. But since it no longer goes by there, no one goes there anymore. It's like a dead highway and this dead, incredible natural attraction that is just beautiful.
How strange. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Had you ridden there before?
Yes, but it's been actually a couple of years. Dar, the last time I was there, Dar and Brad Nelson and I rode up there and then hiked down. And we were on road bikes. And at that time, the road had been kept clear because there was a gauging station on the river. So Forest Service was going in and out of there and they were keeping it clear. But I guess it's been a couple of years since they've done any maintenance on that. So anyhow, it's super fun. There's also part of the Barlow Trail goes through there, and there's a wagon chute that is just amazing, super steep rock slide where they lowered the wagons off the ridge. It's amazing.
Whoa.
Anyhow, cool sights to see.
Oh, that's awesome. So while we are on the topic of adventure, someone was asking how, we use this term adventure, but what defines adventure for you guys?
Well, for me, adventuring could be like this kind of riding that I'm talking about, going and finding out of the way places that may have been abandoned, or gravel riding, maybe packed with overnight gear. Or Dar and I, Cycle Oregon 3 years ago got canceled, and Dar and I have done 2 longer rides, 5-day rides, 6-day rides, where we just brought our gear on our bike and kind of rode credit cards. We weren't bringing like camping gear, but we rode and just did our own little Cycle Oregon kind of self-supported loop. And that was super fun. And the last time we did it, we did tons of gravel. And actually my background is my specialized Diverge, which is my gravel bike, which is the bike I rode on that. And it was a fabulous gravel bike. So gravel touring, fun stuff.
Anne in the chat says, using the wrong bike on a ski slope, that is her idea of adventure. Yeah. They say, right bike, right tool for the ride, for the job, right bike for the ride. But I say, whatever, just ride whatever and then see what happens.
Wasn't there a film in the last Film by Bike that had a thing on the ski slope? No? Yes?
Well, yes.
Well, an animated one? They took it on the ski slope?
Yes. So any other comments from you guys on what you would say adventure means to you?
It's like a good.
You look like you're ready.
It's a good question. Yeah, I don't know if I have like a great definition. I would say like I've had adventure rides that are like 500-mile gravel tours, and I've had adventures that are like 1 mile biking home from work in the pouring rain. I think often like what I portray to the world as what adventure cycling is that longer type of ride, but I'm trying more and more to talk about the shorter adventures or the adventures around the house. But I will say the wrong bike for the right trail definitely always leads to adventure. So, I like the changing background, Sheila. That is nice.
I like. Oh, sorry. Were you gonna go?
Go ahead.
Oh, I think that for me, when I just think of kind of the epitome of my adventure, it is not knowing, just like the complete, like not knowing what my route's going to be, not knowing what length it's going to be, not knowing who or what I'm going to see, but just go.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think of things.
My background change was to a moonlight ride over on the Washington side, mountain biking ride with some friends. And it was kind of funny because if you can see in the picture, there's some clouds there. So a big chunk of the ride was not very well lit at all. And we have a friend that does these moonlight rides, and it's super fun. And I was kind of like, this is kind of crazy. And I think I was the only person on that ride that had not ridden that in the daylight, which was a very interesting experience and quite an adventure. So trying something new and different that you're not quite sure how it's going to end up, to me, is kind of exciting and empowering also.
Yes, I love that. And I love that idea of that it doesn't have to be grand to still be grand in terms of distance or days to still be quite an adventure. Well, I wanted to transition to talking a little bit about some of the other cool things that you guys do, because all three of you do interesting things in addition to what we've been talking about. And I wanted to start off with you, Kailey, because we talked with Marley Blonsky on a previous Bike Culture Happy Hour, and she suggested we talk with you. And that led me to remember that you had that article in Bicycling Magazine. I do a lot of social media management for different clients, and some are in the bike realm, and we were all very excited to share your article and get that message out there. And one term that Marley used was talking about fat positivity and not just saying body positivity, and kind of the shift in that. And as we've been preparing for these shows and using that term and talking with people, and the few people in my quarantine circle who I see in person, I've watched them sort of almost feel uncomfortable when I say that, and I try and give them the permission or the space to be okay with that, because I got that cue from Marley. But I'm curious to hear, and this does not need to be a workshop day. We're not workshopping, we're just hanging out. But, as we begin to talk about more of this, I would love to hear from you, your thoughts on language around the topic, what you're comfortable with, what you encourage other people to be comfortable with, and how you got into this idea of promoting being okay with whoever you are when you ride.
Yeah, such a good question. I think, people are uncomfortable with the word fat, right? And it's taken me a really long time to be comfortable using that word to describe myself or to talk about this movement. But there's a lot of reasons why we are uncomfortable with the word fat, because of all of these values we've prescribed to what that word means, right? Like it's lazy or ugly or bad to be fat, right? So I think getting rid of those connotations that we've associated is one of the first things we can do to address fat phobia and to accept people in all body sizes. But I will say, as we're all learning together and talking about body size, maybe for the first time ever, that calling other people fat without their permission, I wouldn't recommend it. I think you can get yourself into some trouble. You can possibly offend someone. Maybe they don't prefer to call themselves by that label. But I think it's words like saying body size inclusivity. It's a little bit more of a mouthful than the word fat, but it invites everybody of all sizes into the conversation. So I tend to talk about body size inclusion. I tend not to tell other people that they are body positive. I think we tend to tell people who are in larger bodies that are celebrating themselves, like, wow, you're so confident, or you're so body positive, but maybe that person actually isn't those things. We're just sort of ascribing what we think they should feel about themselves. So I think, there's all these rules, right? And everybody wants to work hard not to offend one another, but we also are learning together. It's a touchy subject. Obviously, Marley and I have been working on this for a while, and I don't get it perfectly all the time. And I'm in a large body, so I don't blame anyone for using, the wrong language or whatever the right language even is. But I think, words like body size inclusivity, fat, if somebody does call themselves fat and asks you to call them fat, really think about why that's uncomfortable for you to say. And I think one reaction people have is to say, you're not fat, you're, beautiful, or you're actually skinny or something. And that reaction, I think, try to push back on that, but it's a work in progress. Everybody has a body, and everybody has a relationship with that body that, and at some point in our lives, has been, troubling. So we're all in it together.
I really appreciate you and the work that you and Marley are doing to give people language around this and permission to use certain words and ways to think about certain words, because I feel like a lot of people's discomfort with other people around them, for whatever reason, tends to be a nervousness around getting it wrong and saying the wrong thing. So they tend to just say nothing, or they say something awkward, which comes off as rude or offensive. And really, people are just looking for permission to just be kind to each other and say the right thing. So totally. I think it's really helpful for you to share your ideas on this.
Yeah, and thanks for having me and Marley on to talk about it. We really appreciate any opportunity to just keep sharing this message and getting it wrong and learning together. So
Yeah, that's great. So, how did you get involved in the WTF Bike Explorers? Oh, no, actually, the question I want to ask first is, what was it like to have that article come out in Bicycling Magazine, to be on the cover? I mean, I would be so nervous to have such a big article come out and to know that it was being shared and to be on the cover. How did you feel about that? Were you nervous? I mean, what were the emotions that went along with that experience?
Yeah, I was really nervous. I originally wrote an article about like clothing for plus size cyclists that was just going to be like a web column. And over time that column like transitioned into this article. And then I found out like a few weeks before that it was going to be on the cover of the magazine. Like it had already come out online. So I kind of thought it was over. Like it was awesome that it had come out online. I'd been nervous about that. But when I found out it was going to be on the cover, I was like, okay, brace myself. I think I like thought I was fine. I saw the cover at first on Apple News. My cousin had seen it like come up in her little notifications and let me know that, oh, the magazine's out. And so I'd seen it. I got in my car to go see if it was at the grocery store, and I actually got in a car accident like on the way to get the magazine. I think I was just so out of it. So I think, yeah, to say in front of so many people, you know, I talk about these issues of body size inclusivity, and I talk about myself as a fat cyclist, but to have it so public in a space where people are usually talking about making their bodies smaller or, you know, more fit to be a cyclist, I was pretty worried about what the perception was going to be. I've heard horror stories of what people's reactions have been to articles similar to this. So I felt really fortunate that overall that was not the response that I got from the cycling community. I am just so impressed by the response that I have gotten. I know not everybody feels that way looking at the comments of the article, but I actually think it's pretty amazing that I didn't get anything, you know, no one came to me directly to say something like horribly offensive or something. So I feel like for the most part, the people that came to me directly came to say really positive things. So they did prepare me that it could have been bad, but it wasn't as bad as they prepared me for.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for having that bravery. I mean, even if you didn't know you'd be on the cover, just writing an article about something, you know, I feel like things have been bubbling up for far too long within the cycling industry, that there is a certain image, a lot of clothing is made for a certain body type. There's a certain skin tone that's out there. It's often men. There's a real focus on racing. And this has been bubbling up for the last 20 years, where people are just fed up with this one image that's portrayed in Bicycling Magazine. Really is in so many ways the voice of the bike realm. So, you know, they don't add a lot in there, though they're working on it. I feel like right now things are really bubbling up, and your article just hit at the perfect time. People are ready to hear what you had to say. Like, we need so much more of this, for sure.
Yeah, it's so cool to see the work that everybody's doing to change what cycling looks like. So I'm glad we can be a part of it, Marley and I. Yeah. There's obviously so many other people doing this work.
Yeah. Oh, I know you guys led a workshop recently, and you guys are both involved with WTF Bike Explorers. How did you get involved with the WTF Bike Explorers?
Probably Instagram, I guess. I saw, you know, all the cool Instagram riders putting things out on their stories, and I couldn't go the first year. I was actually up in Alaska finishing a bike ride for the first Bike Explorers Summit that they put on, but I found out about Marley because she talked about body size inclusivity at that first summit that they held. And then we connected on Instagram. And when the second year came around, I reached out to her to ask if we could put on a second workshop at the second summit, which was in Oregon this last August. And so that's how I really got connected with those folks. And they've been just so great in supporting all different types of messages about inclusivity and diversity in cycling, really changing the game. So it's awesome to have been able to present there for the first time in what's such a supportive community with a little bit of nerves, but not as nervous as we were to put on something to the general public. So such a great supportive community, and it's really cool that we got to kind of launch this effort there.
Yeah, that's so great. So chiming in on the chat, we've got lots of folks just reiterating that they appreciated the article. They saw it. It was shared around. It was shared to them. So that's great to hear. People are really glad we're talking about this. We've got a representative from the Cascade Bicycle Club up in Seattle. They're a huge organization up there, real powerhouse. They have unfortunately canceled all of their events for 2020, and they do many events, and they do excellent events. They have a breakfast fundraiser coming up. If you're a fan of Cascade Bicycle Club, check that out. They're going to be doing a virtual fundraiser coming up, and they said they're really thankful for this topic that we're talking about as well. So super great to have all you guys out there in the chat. If you have questions for our guests, feel free to let us know in the chat. If you just want to share what you're drinking tonight at happy hour, whether that's a soda water or anything else in any other realm, let us know. We love to hear from you in the chat. That's really been one of the most surprising aspects of all of the virtual events that we've been doing here at Film by Bike Online, is how vibrant the chat has been. So we love seeing you guys all down in there. Now for you, Sheilagh, I know you have a ton of experience in safe routes to schools and bike advocacy in general. What are some of the things that you're most passionate about working on and that you see happening right now that has you excited?
Well, with the onset of COVID, Safe Routes to School has kind of had to look around and say, okay, what do we do now? And there are a couple of areas that are prominent that I'm super excited about. One is that the Community Cycling Center has taken some of their Safe Routes to School effort to reach out to vulnerable families that are not able to access food, and they're actually doing food delivery. And the last I heard, they had like 55 families they were delivering to, and that was when they were actually building up, and I'm sure by now there's a lot more, and PBOT's doing a lot of that work too. So that's super exciting. And then the other thing is that a lot of the Safe Routes to School people now are kind of stepping back and going, okay, what can we do? And one of the things that's super exciting is working on developing traffic gardens. And I don't know whether people are familiar with what a traffic garden is, but they're popular in Europe, and they're essentially a fixed, like a playground that has been converted into a like small mini-sized neighborhood. Sometimes it includes like little pedal cars or bikes, some kind of vehicles. Sometimes it includes actual traffic control devices like stop signs or traffic lights and stuff like that. There's all variety of these traffic gardens, and it's super exciting that the Safe Routes to School people are beginning to be able to go, oh, okay, school's not in session, so let's be creative and think about what we might be able to push forward in areas that we wouldn't have been able to have the time or energy to do otherwise. So super exciting stuff going on.
Yeah, I think that's great. We here at Bike Culture Happy Hour, we call that the COVID silver linings, the idea that we would not evolve as a species if we did not take our hardships and transform them into something better. Otherwise, we would just be regressing. So we have to look at the positive things that are happening, and those are some great examples there. We had someone on a few weeks ago talking about the school parades that are happening. Becky Jo was talking about how there are school parades that are often happening with cars, and she wanted to work on organizing one with bikes where the students get to see the teachers and there's a parade, but to do it on bikes instead. So I think there's a lot of interesting bicycle related work that can be done around the school system right now as we are in this unusual time. And Dar says there's good educational value in a playground as well. So kudos to that. What are some other things that
Can I tell a little story?
Oh yeah, please do.
Back when I was teaching bike safety in Portland, which I did for 9 years through the BTA, I was at a school one time in East Portland, and I was outside chalking up an intersection because we chalked up intersections to give kids instructional cues on how to like make right turns and left turns and, do they yield at a stop sign and all that kind of good stuff. And there was a work truck out there, and usually they're kind of like frustrating because they're in our way and he was parked in a way that was going to have to make me rethink how I was doing things. And so I asked and checked in, like, are you going to be here at this time? And they were like, oh, no. And then they saw what I was doing. And the guy got out and he said, darn it, I have a paint gun. If I had had that paint gun with me, I would have like painted over so this was there. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure that's such a great idea. I go in, I teach my class, which is a 20-minute class, and then I bring the kids out on the bikes. And sure enough, that guy had gone off, gotten his paint gun, and came back and painted over my chalked intersection. So I was like, hey, kids, you can bring your parents out here and you can practice and show them what you're learning. And that's like coming back to Dar's comment about the educational opportunity with the traffic garden. It's so great because it's just there all the time. And kids can go and play around with what it feels like to be traffic and on a bike, walking in a car. That's so exciting. Anyhow, there you go.
I
my
love
story.
It. That's awesome. So what are some things that you guys are seeing out there that you're excited about? I'll kick things off by sharing something I saw yesterday. I took a street to walk my dog I don't usually take, and I saw this little wooden sign. It was about this big on a stake, really low to the ground, and it was hand painted by a kid. And I thought, oh, that's cute. It was kind of in this overgrown grass in the parking strip, and I didn't think anything of it. And I crossed the street, and I continued on that same street, and there were more of them. And I realized somebody had lined both sides of the street. It's, for those who know it, it's Junior Street in Woodlawn in Portland. And it's a very residential street. And some kid in the neighborhood had hand drawn all these signs. And they said things like, we love our neighbors. We don't like COVID. We'll get through this together. All these really great sentiments. And it was so fun because as I was walking my dog, and I have to admit, there are days when walking my dog is boring. And as I was walking my dog, I was so entertained. I took a photo of every one of them. And it was fun to see, oh, here's another one. What does this one say? And because they were so little, I had to get down on the ground and like look at them, and it was kid writing, so it's sloppy, and I kind of had to decipher it. But it was so fun to have a little moment where I almost felt like someone had made a little game or scavenger hunt for me out there. And so it got me all excited to kind of think about those kinds of projects at this time. Have you guys been seeing anything interesting out there that has delighted you as you're moving about your days? Oh, somebody also posted that people have been doing the yarn bombing and like doing the polls. They've been seeing more of that lately. So I've been seeing some people post great pictures of that. The kind of stuff that you really wouldn't notice. If you're even on a bike, sometimes don't notice, but when you're moving quickly through the world, wouldn't notice these kinds of things.
I went on a walk yesterday and saw so a kid had made a sign, and I'd seen this like online, but I didn't think I'd run into it in person, and it said silly walk zone, and then they drew on the sidewalk with chalk like, do a silly walk here. And I thought it was a kid that had put it out, but the house that's nearest to that part of the sidewalk, it was actually like an older man sitting in like an old man just sitting in his house with his window open. And he was watching, because I kind of looked around to see, is anybody watching? Should I do the walk? And I did the silly walk. So I was pretty happy to take part in that. And I never walk around my community. I'm always on my bike until COVID, really. I had never walked around the neighborhood. So it's pretty fun to be like walking around the neighborhood and noticing, maybe there was always a silly walk zone, but I would have never noticed if I had not gotten off my bike.
That's so great. I love that.
I think, at least in my neighborhood, the amount of hopscotch that's being drawn, and just the amount of times that like I've seen adults, including my husband and myself, just go for it. It's just, what else? It just brings such a great energy to whatever is going on that walk, where, yeah, it's been kind of depressing. The walks are boring. We've done the same walk over and over again. My dog knows where he's going and knows where he wants to go, so that's how we're going to go. And to just kind of give in and just go for the hopscotch.
Yeah, go for the hopscotch.
not kind of sort of, but just really engage with that. And then just the chalk art. Bellingham is killing it with the chalk art. Let's just say that.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but hopscotch has gotten long. It's
Yeah,
like COVID hopscotch is like, it just, I saw one that went around the block and my boyfriend was like, you got to do it. You got to do it. You said, you know, you're athletic. You got to just go do every square. And I was like, this one goes forever. Anne in the chat was saying we should call it silly cycling, and I would love that. There's a bunch of bikers that go through my neighborhood, so maybe I'll chalk up do the silly cycling move and watch what people do as they ride through the area. That's so fun.
I was just gonna say, whoops, sorry.
Go ahead.
So early on in COVID, when I first came up to the cabin, I was able to do some hiking and skiing. And I was so impressed with the families I would see. And it was like 2 or 3 families that would come out with their kids and were sledding and having fun on the mountain. It's like, you know, it's such a great family time because you're locked up with your family. So if you can get out and do something fun, anyhow, it was really super sweet to see them up there. And the parents and the kids were all really careful as I went by to give me a space. It was just, it was really cool.
Do you guys have the teddy bear hunt too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
You don't know
families, the kiddos, they're doing like the teddy bear tour. So there's so many families that have teddy bears in the windows to give the other kids just teddy bears to go search for, and if you could like spot the teddy bear, so that's been really fun to just see like enormous stuffed bears tucked into tiny upstairs windows. That's been really fun.
Yeah,
I put my teddy bear out, and it's like a 3-foot teddy bear. And I had to like brace him up there in the window so that he could be seen. It's like, you're not going to miss him. It was pretty hilarious trying to get him up there.
Well, one thing that I think has been interesting about this time is because of the lack we understand what we want. So I'm talking to some adventure cyclists today and people who love being outdoors. And I thought I would ask you guys, what are you thinking about for your next adventure? What's the adventure you haven't gone on that you want to go on? Because even though we can't ride together right now, doesn't mean we can't dream big. And I think this is an awesome time to be doing that research, thinking about where you want to go. Ask other people where they've been. Ask them how they did it. You know, get the tips and resources and plan for our next adventures. That it's so hard to do that when we're in regular life and like life is crazy and it's fun to like, I like to sit on a Saturday night and dink around on my computer and plan a trip, but it's not always easy to carve out that time. So I think this is a great time to be thinking about these adventures. What's on the mind for you guys? Where do you guys want to go next? What does that adventure look like to you? Is it gravel? Is it mountain bike? Is it multi-day? Is it staying in motels? Is it by yourself? Is it with other people? What are you guys thinking about?
I guess the trips I've postponed that I'm still daydreaming about and now fine-tuning. I've been wanting to do the Oregon Timber Trail for a long time, and this year for a long time, as long as it's been around. I guess it's not that long. And I this year finally got the right bike to do it, and my friends that I usually go with, they all got the right bike to do it. All of us have always ridden cross gravel bikes, so we finally got full squish bikes, and we were gearing up and getting ready. So we've still got that on the brain. But I will say, like, we were nowhere near ready for that trip. Like, technically, like none of us were great mountain bikers. So this has been a really good time to prepare and actually work on some skills. I've also gotten really into the idea of like a single point bike tour where you come back to the same place every night, so that friends that don't have maybe can't afford like bike touring bags or don't have the right bike, we can all just set up camp, and I'm calling it a star party.
Oh,
So like
I love that.
5 different routes, and each day you just go on a different route, but you always end up at the same campsite. So I've been planning that, and it wasn't going to be ready in time for this year. So now I'm really excited that I got to kind of like fine tune the details and get it right for the opening year of what I hope will be like this great bike party every year.
Great. Love that idea so much.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you. So last year I worked with 7 of my dear friends who they were in various level of biking capability. Some of them had never biked 2 days back to back, and we did a 4-day bike tour together, and it was self-assisted. We had a van and we took turns driving the van. And we're planning that again for September, but we're sort of like planning it tentatively. But I love what you were saying, Kailey, about the single point, because this year we're going to be instead of moving locations every single time, we're going to be in 2 different locations. And so we'll still have to, portage to a different location once. But once we get to our first location, we'll do 2 days at each location. So that's kind of exciting. And we're super excited we're going to be up at Lake Chelan and up in the, the Cascade Wilderness, North Cascades area. So we're super excited about this trip, and we hope that we can pull it off in September, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. Personally, I've been thinking about like, what next for me, because I'm in this unemployment and I'm not sure where I'm going next. And I want to bring more biking, and I would love to bring more adventure into my life. And I've wanted to ride across the country. So I think I need to work on a plan to make that happen. So that's what I'm thinking about. And I'm involved in the Social Distance Cycling Club on Facebook.
Yeah, shout out to Fred Zell. He's in the chat tonight.
And there's a handful of those folks that were going to do the MS across the U.S. trip that has been canceled. And so just seeing all these pictures from all over the world on that has just been inspiring, totally inspiring.
Yeah, I want to give I do this every week. I want to give a shout out to the Social Distance Cycling Group on Facebook. Sometimes I call it Global Distance Cycling Group. I get it wrong. I don't know why. Fred Zelt started this. He's the host of Film My Bike Pittsburgh, and he was using that event as a fundraiser for Bike the US for MS. And when he realized he couldn't have his film fest, and then he realized he couldn't go on his bike ride, he transformed all his energy into starting this Facebook group, which is now up to over 6,000 members. They just had the newest member join from Nairobi. It's people from all over the world who just want to have other people around them who understand their shared passion for bikes, and that we are not riding in groups right now. So people post pictures of their rides, and Sheilagh, it's been so fun to see you on there as well. And I just think it's a really cool group. So Fred, thank you for joining us on the chat tonight and at our events, and also for making this important group happen. It's really been an important source of support for a lot of people, I think, and an inspiration. It got me on my bike one day. Someone was posting, and the next day I went for a ride because of what I had been seeing.
And Aileen, you posted one of my favorite rides up in Forest Park. Oh, I love that ride.
I haven't. So my new idea for Forest Park is, well, get out there earlier, because I know that every time I get out there too late and then I'm with a bunch of people, and it is not pleasant in general, and especially right now, it's just not good. And then you can't rip. So I like rip in, and then I feel like a jerk because I'm ripping past some, family hiking. But my idea is I've got a whole series we're going to run for Film My Bike. It's called Forest Park Loops, and it's going to be like the different ways to do the similar roads, because there aren't that many. But then it's sort of like, when do you want your climbing in, and when do you want a bomb? And, I like to do the Germantown bomb home. I like to end on that note, but other people might like to do it differently. So my idea is to come up with like 4 or 5 different loops, and then just keep riding them and seeing the differences I feel personally as I ride each of them, because I always do it differently, and it's fun to kind of catalog that. So that's my new project, is Forest Park Loops. So Kelcy, anything on the docket for you? Anything on the mind?
Well, one of the reasons I moved to Bellingham was because I realized that I could get on my bike and then ride to a ferry and then ride to the San Juan Islands and then camp on those and then ride back to my house. So that has definitely been something that we were going to do in April with a friend that ended up getting postponed. So we'll probably do that. And then I'm tentatively planning. My friend is supposed to get married at the end of September in my hometown of Fort Collins, Colorado. And ideally, at some point, I would love to ride from Bellingham to Fort Collins on the adventure cycling routes. So those are the two I'm just tinkering around with on a regular basis.
Nice. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining me today on Bike Culture Happy Hour. We came up with some really interesting things on this show in ways that we haven't necessarily done on the other shows. So I just want to summarize, kind of in a nutshell, what I got out of today's conversation. One, the idea of learning language and being comfortable with language in terms like body size, inclusivity. So Kailey, thank you so much for that. Not knowing is a big part of what makes adventure. I really love that. Let's all do some more silly cycling. Let's have more star parties. The chat went crazy for that. They love that idea, star parties. And when in doubt, go for the hopscotch.
Yes.
Yes.
All in.
You guys, thanks so much for joining me. Any parting words or any last things you guys want to mention before we close out the call?
Just cheers to you, Aileen, for doing this and for bringing this to the people. I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys, for joining me. So, folks, thanks for being here on Bike Culture Happy Hour. Thanks to everyone who's in the chat. We've loved hearing from you, your ideas, your thoughts, and your feedback. Coming up next week on Bike Culture Happy Hour, we're going to be talking with one of my Portland favorite people, Jude Gerace, who is the founder of the custom bicycle wheel building shop Sugar Wheel Works. She built that up into a very successful business and then passed it on, sold it to Breadwinner Cycles. They joined forces to be stronger together. And Jude is just an awesome cyclist and super fun person to chat with. And then after that, it's going to be our 10th episode, which is crazy to think about. So we thought we would celebrate our 10th episode by bringing on a bunch of people from across the country who are involved in bike parties. The bike party movement is crazy. We had Greg Hum from Boston on a couple weeks ago, or I think that was last week. So we want to hear more about what people are doing to party on bikes and what that's like for people who aren't partying on bikes in a group right now. So that's going to be coming up in 2 weeks. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel down below to get notified of all the upcoming programs that we have here on Film by Bike on YouTube. Thank you everyone for believing in us and following along with what we're doing. We love being here with you, sharing space, holding space, and being able to share our passion for bikes with you. The 18th annual Film by Bike Film Festival should have been this weekend at the gorgeous, historic Hollywood Theater in Portland, Oregon. We have an amazing collection of films for 6 programs spanning 3 days at the theater. Obviously, that's not happening this year, but thanks to all of you and your support of these online events, we're okay with the fact that things are different this year. We're actually feeling okay about the fact that the world's crazy right now, but we don't feel as negatively affected because we were able to do all these online events, which have been rewarding. And thanks to all of you for buying tickets to our ticketed events. Not everything is ticketed, but for the ticketed events, you guys came out in force. That allowed us to rehire the Film by Bike team. We had put our team on hold while we figured everything out. And now it's not a lot of work, but we are able to get to a backlog of some really exciting projects we've been meaning to get to. So you'll be able to see some really cool creativity coming out of Film by Bike as a result of your support that's allowing us to rehire our team. They've both been laid off. We're a small team. So our other 2 staff, they've been laid off from their other jobs, and they're hungry to get things done. As for what the 18th annual Film by Bike looks like, we don't yet know. We're just going to wait and see. We're hoping to know more by mid-June, but everything's changing so quickly. All ideas are currently on the table. So we could be doing something very unusual and creative if it looks like theater venues are not going to be an option. We would love to be back at the gorgeous historic Hollywood Theater here in Portland. They've been an amazing home for us and extremely supportive, and we wish them well at this challenging time. We absolutely love being in the theater. We have an amazing international collection of films. We work with a great global community of filmmakers, and we can't wait to show those films with you. So there will be an 18th annual Film by Bike Film Festival this year, and we can't wait to tell you more when we know more. In the meantime, watch all of the interesting interviews that we have here on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe down below so we can notify you when we have future events going on. And we look forward to seeing you all next week here on Bike Culture Happy Hour. Thanks, guests. It was so great to have you all here. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.